Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. Today we're going over 10 rules you've most probably missed in Finspan, a Wingspan game from Stonemaire Games. Now, this doesn't mean that these rules are missed every single time, but they're certainly easily forgotten and things that you want to refresh before you sit down to play again. These 10 rules come from what is presumably a fairly lightweight, straightforward board game. Now, if you're brand new to the board gaming hobby, this might be the upper echelon of what you have played. Totally cool. But Finspan is intended to be a 40 to 60 minute, very approachable tableau sort of engine building style game with an open card row and a lot of shared communal information. The main objective is to score as many victory points as possible, and as long as you are aware or keep note of these 10 rules, you should be able to sit down and have a very, very good time. First rule, really helpful thing to remember, because not a lot of board games do this, even though this is a, engine builder, a tableau builder, not a deck builder, you still have your own personal discard pile. So when I extend a resource, like I spend cards from the top of my fish in order to play someone down onto my tableau or onto my board, any cards that I've expended, that I've discarded, will go into their own stack next to the table for just me. There are a lot of mechanics in this game that actually allow you to use a card as a resource and then recall that card and either use it as a resource again or have it available to play later in the game. This comes in to your advantage when you early on in the game have cards like these yellow cards or more expensive large fish cards with more powerful abilities, and you don't need them right away. You've got a couple rounds and a few turns before you actually need to try to get them onto your tableau or onto your board, because they're not going to build your engine. They're not going to benefit you, but they can work as a resource, going back and forth until it's time or you've set up the conditions correctly for you to actually get them played. Rule number 2 and number 3 is going to deal with the dive action. The dive action is one of the 2 core actions you can take in the game, and you'll probably take this about 50% of all the actions that you take. First action is, of course, playing cards, and then you have dives available here with card draw and recall, here with laying eggs, and here with hatching eggs and moving them into larger schools of fish. Now, the 2 things you need to remember for the card dive action is, first off, that cards have to be in their respective zones in order to trigger the zone ability or the region ability. So right now, if I went down this card draw row, this blue row, I would not get anything for this upper portion of the reef. I would not get anything for the middle portion of the reef, but I would be able to go ahead and draw a card for this lower portion of the reef, and I would be able to go ahead and take this bonus action because I don't have a meeple covering it yet. So as you play the game, and the very first few times you play down fish, try to do so in a way that unlocks more of this engine that already exists on your board. You do have some starter fish, so try not to duplicate locations that already have them on your tableau unless it's a really good, advantageous reason to play someone down. Try to fill open zones with new fish so that you trigger the extra bonus ability. And, of course, try to make it as cohesive and organized as possible, because as you progress downward, you'll stop at every action and at every fish. So you want to make sure that if you have a recall and you have a spend fish action, you're going to be able to do those in order, or a consume fish followed by an eat, as opposed to the opposite, which I've experienced, which has made me have a few little guppies swim by when I could have swallowed them or tucked them under another card for a few extra victory points. Along with that, the third thing, or the second thing you need to remember from this dive action ability, is that this lower action here always gets covered up by the first meeple down that row in every round of the game. So you'll get the chance to do each one of these 4 times across the course of a normal game if you've taken a dive action for each region. However, like all the other card abilities you have, and even other player abilities, everything is optional. So Even though it says recall a card from the graveyard or gain an egg or move a fish, I certainly don't have to. And that's true for all the other abilities as well that you're collecting along the way. If there's a reason why you might want to hold on to something, like keep an egg as opposed to hatch an egg, you're not forced into any one action. Moving on to point number 4, fish on fish action is what I wrote down in my notes. I had to say that out loud so I remembered the joke that I was making. This game allows you to cover up other fish. The placement is very open-ended. When you go to place a fish, you just have to cover the resource. And as long as you are paying attention to the zone that the fish corresponds to, meaning sun, 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 and middle area, the icon over here on the side, and being conscientious if there is a color that the fish is obligated to go to, green, blue, purple. Most of the fish happen to be open-ended, as opposed to the region zone. You can go anywhere on the board, including on top of other fish. The 3 fish that are printed on your board that are starting fish for you become worth 1 victory point if you cover them up. And all other fish can be swallowed. Now, why might you want to swallow another fish? 1, they become victory points. 2, some abilities or some endgame mechanics trigger in correspondence with having fish that are eaten. 3, you might have a card that would be really great to play down, but you don't have room for it anymore. Or you might have a card whose ability is kind of expired. You don't need the action they gave you anymore, and they don't give you a lot of victory points, so you might as well cover them up. If you find yourself in a situation where you don't feel like you can play cards, double check the length of your fin down there in the bottom left-hand corner. As long as you are greater than any of the fish here on the board, you can play on top of it. Equal, however, does not count, so a 30 must be swallowed by a 31 or more. Moving on to point number 5. Let's talk about the consume fish action symbol. This is one that actually confuses me pretty consistently. I think they should have differentiated between the icon as opposed to just the position it is on the board. We have the consume fish up here as a resource cost, something you must do to play this fish down. And then over here on the tripod fish, we have the reward or a benefit being a consume fish reward. And we also have a game end check saying if you have X number of consumed fish, you will get this. The icon functions differently, unlike any of the other icons, depending on where, if it's on the top left or middle right side of the card. This icon here means I must play on top of another fish on the board. That could be, this one here that's already printed, or another one that's smaller than 90 centimeters in the Atlantic Bonito category. Over here, this means that I could take from my hand fish that happen to be smaller than 43 centimeters for the tripod fish and tuck them underneath the tripod fish, meaning that once it's already out there on the table, I can score some victory points by sticking cards underneath it. That just happens to always confuse me. The icon, meaning that I get to consume, functions slightly differently depending on the side of the card. I don't know if everyone else is like that in terms of icons and having different usage in different locations, but for me, even though we've played over a dozen games of this, I do find myself having to remind myself time and time again of what each one of those icon locations indicates. Moving on to point number, 6. 3 young become a school. So, if I have 3 young fish out here on the board, and I'm moving them around, and they happen to land in the same location, they immediately, this is one of the only functions of the game that does not give you an option, they immediately become a school of fish. And you can't break a school apart into smaller fish subsets. And let's say, for instance, you're trying to move one small fish to another location or happen to hatch an egg spawning a small fish, you will immediately end up with a school. And sometimes that's not what you're looking for, because sometimes you want those small fish to be used as resources for other cards. So keep that in mind. It is a benefit because you'll score some additional victory points from them. They double in value, going from 1 victory point each all the way up to 6 for a school. But again, I have been in situations where I've had a group of fish turn into a school, and then I've immediately realized that I needed some single fish in order to do the next action that I wanted to do. And I was stuck in a rock and a hard place, and my wife is a ruthless gamer who has beat me nearly every time we have played Finspan, and she doesn't often let me take back actions once the turn has passed. So please keep that in mind. One of the rules you can remember for that, but also how things or resources move around the board, is 1 egg, 1 fish, 1 egg, 3 fish, 1 school. Each location on the board can have a maximum of 1 egg, can have a maximum of 1 school, meaning you can't cross, you can't lay more eggs on a fish that already has an egg, you can't swim a school into another location with a school already, and 3 fish. You can have a maximum of 3 fish. But we just talked about the fact that 3 fish always become a school, and if you happen to already have a school, you can't have a second one in that location. Well, here's where it gets interesting, and this card actually displays it perfectly. 10 points if on this location you have 1 egg, 1 fish, and 1 school. Almost displays it perfectly. If you happen to be in a situation where you have 3 fish on a location with 1 school of cards, meaning situation just like this, these fish will not turn into a school until this guy has moved away, and then they'll immediately convert into a group of fish. I don't know why, if there's a big herd, all the little straggling fish decide that they're independent from the larger group, but that's how this game operates. Moving down to point number 7, I think. Changing game and actions. Chaining game and actions. This is something that I discovered maybe 6 or 7 games in, and I think it's actually one of my favorite features of Finspan to date. When you get to the very end of the game, if you have cards such as this striped marlin or this larger tooth flounder, you can actually start chaining actions together. For instance, the striped marlin would allow you to lay a card in a sunny region. That card then might be another card that allows you to lay an additional card, and you can cycle them in whatever order you need. So for instance, if I happen to need more eggs in order to activate and place the card down that I wanted to play down, I could activate the larger tooth flounder first, going ahead and getting eggs in all my green cards. Then I could activate the striped marlin, going ahead and playing a card down up in the sunny zone. And then, for instance, if I could find another card that lets me play or trigger, I could go ahead and utilize that ability as well. So, let's see here. We're digging, we're looking. I really should have had this maybe prepared beforehand. I had a number of things prepared beforehand, but I didn't have my favorite feature of the game already set up and ready to go. So for instance, if I triggered the striped marlin, I then could go ahead and play out the abyssal halosar, which would then allow me to play another card down into this bottom region. So you can sequence and have cards that allow you to trigger and play other cards, and you can resolve all of your endgame conditions in whatever order you would like. And there's a lot of endgame conditions that actually allow you to chain or allow you to continue playing cards down onto the tableau as long as you have resources. So when I get to the 3rd or 4th round, if I have a few of those tucked away, I start just preparing my resource pile, my deck of cards, to give me the biggest end turn possible, allowing me to sequence, play, and continue building way past when everyone has already resolved and resigned. It's like extra bonus actions, which in a game like this, 3, 4, 5 extra actions, extra turns that you get to take can be extremely, extremely valuable and can be the difference between winning and losing if done right. Moving on down to point number 8 or point number 9. I think this is point number 9 now. First place gains 3 additional points. Now there are 2 sides to this achievement board. There's side A and there's side B. Side A is just going to go ahead and prompt you. It's sort of the starter version of this game. Might be a little bit more balanced, might be a little bit more interesting, but we always play on side B that allows you to randomize and set up your own little asymmetric puzzle, the objectives that you're going for. Now, on side B, whoever scores the highest this breaks it down, but you should pay attention to it. Whoever scores the highest in each one of these categories will gain 3 extra points. On top of that, if you happen to tie, it's a friendly tie, so you'll both gain 3 extra points. That's important because in most games that I've played, even though I have lost, I've lost close. The last game that I played was something along the lines of like 116 to 111. So a few extra points from those achievements can really matter. Moving on down to the very last, point number 10. Everything is technically face up, except for your discard pile. There's no draw pile in this game. You're just going to be drawing from the deck of cards here, but your hand of cards is laid out on the table. Strategically, that might not matter early on in your journey through Finspan, but as you get more and more accustomed to and strategic with this game, you might want to double check what other players have. Specifically, the cards that allow them or cause them to lay eggs or allow you to lay eggs on certain fish in their row, whether that's the columns that you have, the top or bottom section, the size of fish. This game comes down to a lot of deciding when and how to utilize abilities, and oftentimes it matters what the other players are about to do. So, for instance, I had a situation where I saw that Shira had just laid eggs on all of her purple cards, and I had a card that allowed me to lay eggs on all of my purple as well. And so her row was filled up. I used my card. My card was friendly, meaning it would have allowed her to do the same, but she already had eggs on all those cards, meaning she got no benefit from that action. And usually those cards have a little bit of a higher cost, but also a little bit of a higher victory point threshold. So I gained quite a degree of benefit from her situation. Along with that, we've had situations where she had one large fish and I had none left in my row, and we were both going for the same victory point or the same objective, and there was no way I was going to be able to meet it because she already had what she was looking for. I find that if you're drawing into the deck hunting for something specific, you're not often going to get it. So I had to adjust and started preparing for the third round of the game, week 3, trying to score as high as I could on that instead of going for the large fish category in week 2 because I knew Shira probably had that on lock. There's a lot of elements like that and a lot of things, not too complex, but subtle things to pay attention to once you know the game better. So if anyone's trying to hide their cards or hold them in their hand or just being a little fiddly with the way that they're playing the game, maybe take an extra closer look at what they're about to put down on their board and how you might make an advantageous play in response to the actions that they've done. Okay, those are 10 rules, 10 things you need to remember when playing Finspan. I'm working on a list for 10 things you need to remember when going fishing. I don't go fishing. I have before, but it's not a thing that I do, and so it's a pretty complicated list. So if you've made it to this part in the video, please leave a comment down below letting me know the 10 things or the one thing that I should add to my list of 10 things that I need to remember, and I should let you all remember when going fishing. Is it pliers, so you can get the fish hook out of your cheek, or a tackle box full of worms so you can, I don't know, ruthlessly hook a wriggling little specimen and then toss him out of the waves to be succumbed by one of these ravenous creatures? Who knows? But if you leave a comment, I will soon. Whatever the case, though, we'll see you next time. Bye.